The polished cabin glowed with soft lights and gentle hums. Wide, plush seats lined either side of a broad aisle. Each seat had its own large screen, a pillow, and a soft blanket folded neatly. The carpets felt thick underfoot, and fresh flowers sat in small vases on every side table. Rich wood panels and brushed metal finishes gave the space a calm, elegant feel. In this high-sky palace, every detail spoke of comfort and care. A family arrived at the gate and stepped in first. Mr. and Mrs. Langley walked with poise. Both wore fine clothes, tailored suit for him, a flowing dress for her. They looked calm and sure, as if flying first class was just part of their life. Their son, Jamie, trailed behind. He was 8 years old, energetic and bright-eyed. A small backpack dangled from his shoulder, patterned with colorful rockets and stars. Jamie's eyes grew wide the moment he saw the cabin. He paused at the entrance and stared. "Wow," he whispered, though he did not mean to be loud. His mother smiled and held out her hand. "Come on, sweetie," she said softly. Jamie reached for her hand, but then let go and bounded forward. He skipped down the aisle, his small feet making no sound on the thick carpet. The flight attendant, Maria, stood near the front door. She wore a neat uniform with a colorful scarf tied around her neck. Her dark hair was in a tidy bun, and her badge shone under the soft lights. She welcomed each passenger with a warm smile and a gentle nod. As Jamie approached, she crouched down and spoke kindly. "Hello there. Come aboard," she said. Her voice was smooth, practiced. She pointed to his seat. "Your seat is right this way, young man." Jamie thanked her politely, but his gaze drifted around. He noticed the little compartment next to his seat where he could put his toy cars. He saw the headphone jack and the slot for a magazine, saw the small window shade handle, and he tugged it a little to see outside. The clouds looked soft and infinite beyond the glass. He blinked in wonder. Maria guided him gently. "Let me help you with your backpack," she offered. Jamie handed it over. She placed it under the seat neatly and patted it once. "All set," she said. Jamie hopped into the seat and leaned back. He reached for the blanket, tugging it out so it fell over his knees. His mother sat beside him, smoothing the blanket and tucking it around his legs carefully. His father sat across the aisle in his own seat, settling in with a sigh of relief. The cabin filled slowly as more passengers boarded. An elderly couple who spoke softly in French, a businessman tapping on his phone, a young woman with a tablet. Maria moved down the aisle, offering water, hot towels, and menus for dinner. She carried a tray with small glasses, each filled with a clear liquid that sparkled like a little gem. She offered one to Jamie's mother first. "Would you like some water?" she asked. Mrs. Langley nodded, and Maria placed a glass gently. On the side table, Jamie watched Maria with fascination. He had seen flight attendants on TV, but never so close. He noticed how calm she was. Her smile never faded, her posture stayed straight, and her voice remained soft. He wanted to ask her 100 questions, but he held himself back. Instead, he started tapping his foot lightly, playing a quiet rhythm. The gentle thumping seemed to match the hum of the engines. Maria moved on and offered drinks to the others. She remembered each person's preference from the notes on her tablet. She spoke each name clearly and with respect. "Mr. Chen, your green tea. Miss Rivera, your sparkling water." She placed each drink so carefully that not a drop spilled. Some passengers looked up and smiled gratefully. Others just nodded and returned to their screens. Jamie grew restless. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small folded paper airplane he had made earlier that morning. He opened it and tried to smooth out the creases. He tapped it against the armrest, then folded it again. He tapped Maria's shoulder lightly, wanting her to look at his plane. Maria noticed the tap. She smiled and leaned in. "What do you have there?" she asked, curious. Jamie held up the paper airplane. "I made this," he said proudly. "Can I fly it a little." He did not mean to be naughty. He just wanted to share his creation. Maria looked toward the aisle, imagining the little craft drifting in the air. She hesitated. The cabin was neat, and they had not taken off yet. She shook her head gently. "Not here, sweetie. Maybe later, when we are above the clouds and it is safe." She patted his shoulder and moved on to serve another passenger. Jamie frowned, but did not complain. He tucked the airplane back into his backpack. Then he noticed the drink menu on the seat back in front of him. It showed pictures of orange juice, apple juice, tomato juice, a whole array of choices. He tapped the menu with his finger, pointing at the orange juice. When Maria returned, she remembered. "Orange juice for you?" she asked. Jamie nodded, his face brightening. Maria poured a small glass and placed it on his tray table. He sipped the juice, the sweet taste making him smile. The cabin lights dimmed a little as the engines roared to life. Passengers leaned back, buckling their seat belts. Jamie's father turned to him and said, "Ready for our adventure?" Jamie nodded and clicked his belt with excitement. He felt the plane move forward, then speed down the runway. Outside the window, the airport lights blurred past like tiny stars rushing by. As the plane lifted off, Jamie pressed his face to the window. He watched the ground fall away, the houses shrinking until they looked like tiny blocks. The clouds drifted by, glowing pink and gold in the setting sun. He felt a soft bump as the plane hit a patch of air. He giggled. His mother laughed too, reaching out to tuck his hair behind his ear. "You see," she said softly, "we're in the sky now." Maria moved through the cabin once more, checking on everyone. She paused by Jamie's seat and asked if he needed anything else. He shook his head, his eyes still on the clouds. She smiled one last time before moving on to prepare the cabin for dinner service. As she walked away, she felt a small tap on her arm. She turned and saw Jamie holding out his paper airplane again. This time he whispered, "Can I try flying it now?" Maria looked at him. She saw the hope in his eyes. She knew the rules, but she also saw his excitement. For a moment, she considered it. Then she shook her head and said gently, "Soon, sweetie, I promise." Jamie's face fell, but he tucked the plane away with a sigh. Maria offered him a comforting smile. Behind her polite calm, Maria was thinking of her daughter at home, waiting. On a school night, she imagined the bedtime stories she would miss. She felt the gentle pull of homesickness. Still, she straightened her shoulders and turned back to her duties. She was responsible for every person in this cabin, from the elderly couple to the busy businessman, and yes, even to curious little Jamie. As the seatbelt sign blinked off and dinner service began, the cabin settled into a rhythm. Cutlery clinked. Soft music played through the speakers and the plane glided smoothly among the clouds. Jamie sat quietly sipping his juice, glancing occasionally at Maria. She moved gracefully from seat to seat, helping guests, refilling glasses, answering questions. The boy watched her with admiration. In that moment, the sky felt boundless. The promise of a journey stretched out before them. Jamie's laughter mixed with the soft sounds of the engine. Maria's practiced grace filled the cabin with calm. The wealthy world of first class held its magic with every comfort at hand and hint of impatience. Wah. The soft hum of the engines faded into the background as dinner trays slid from the galley. Maria paused at Jamie's seat to offer his next course. The table clattered with dishy steaming soup in a porcelain bowl, a small loaf of warm bread and a side salad with bright cherry tomatoes. Jamie's eyes lit up at the sight. He reached eagerly for the soup spoon, his little fingers brushing the bowl's rim. He scooped a spoonful of creamy carrot soup and blew gently to cool it before tasting. The warm, sweet flavor made him smile. Across the aisle, Mr. Langley finished a bite of roast chicken and reached for his wine glass. Mrs. Langley helped Jamie sip his soup. Maria moved on to greet another passenger, but Jamie's curiosity lingered. He set the spoon down and glanced. Around the cabin, the table lamp cast a soft light, and the window showed streaks of pink clouds in the dusk. He noticed a fold-down screen on the seat back in front of him and pressed a button to bring up a map. The map showed their flight path and tiny icons of clouds and cities below. Jamie tapped at the screen, watching their plane icon move over the ocean. Suddenly, his spoon slipped from his hand. It clinked against the bowl's edge and rattled on the tray. The spoon flew off the tray and landed on the carpet without making much noise. Jamie frowned and leaned over to pick it up. In doing so, he knocked his glass of orange juice. The glass wobbled, then tipped. Rich orange liquid spilled across the table, dripped onto the salad, and poured onto the carpet by Maria's polished shoes. Maria glanced back at the spill. Her calm expression flickered for a moment as she bent down to catch the dripping juice. With a cloth from her apron, sweet smell of oranges mixed with the cabin's fresh scent. She placed the cloth under the table to soak up the liquid, her uniform's crisp lines now marked with tiny spots of juice. Jamie's mother gasped softly and leaned forward. "Oh, honey, are you all right?" she asked him, worry creasing her brow. Jamie's cheeks reddened. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice trembling. He looked at the ruined salad and the wet carpet. He felt tears building and his heart pounding. He had only wanted to enjoy his soup. He had not meant to make a mess or cause trouble. Maria dabbed the spill quickly, her professional composure returning. She said softly, "It's okay. Accidents happen." She motioned to a fresh towel and asked another attendant to bring replacement dishes. Relief washed over Jamie. He leaned back in his seat, feeling grateful that Maria was not angry. He picked up his salad again, cleaned by a new cloth, and took a small bite. The crisp lettuce tasted fresh, and he chewed thoughtfully. His mother patted his hand, smiling. "Try to slow down, sweetie," she said gently. Jamie nodded earnestly, vowing to be more careful. Soon the cabin returned to a quiet rhythm. The elderly couple murmured over their meals. The businessman tapped keys on his laptop. The young woman with the tablet earphones played music. Maria moved on to clear trays and served dessert, tiny slices of layered cake with a drizzle of chocolate. Jamie watched her, his earlier embarrassment fading. He reached for the cake but paused. He still had his paper airplane in his pocket, and an idea sparked in his mind. While his mother's attention was on clearing the last of her dishes, Jamie slipped his hand into his backpack. He pulled out the paper airplane, smooth and white. He folded it again, trying to perfect its wings. He tapped it on the armrest beside Maria's cart as she placed a plate for another passenger. The tap caught her attention. She turned, her brow furrowing slightly. Jamie tapped again, louder this time, wanting her to look at his plane. Maria frowned. She straightened her back and said, "Jamie, please stop tapping. I need to do my work." Her voice was firm, but not cruel. She moved on to serve another passenger, rearranging dessert plates. Jamie felt a pang of hurt. He had only wanted to share his toy. Tapped once more, lightly this time. Maria stopped. Her hand paused over a dessert plate, and she turned. "Young man," she said, her voice colder now, "if you tap me again, you will need to sit quietly." Jamie's lip quivered. He looked at his mother, hoping she would intervene. Mrs. Langley met his eyes and gave a gentle nod to let him know she would speak to him later. Jamie slid the plane back into his pocket and focused on his cake. He took a small bite, but his mind raced. He felt like a naughty child, and he hated it. A few moments passed in quiet. Then Jamie's spoon rattled his dessert plate, and some cream dripped onto the carpet. His mother gasped. Maria rushed back, bent down, and grabbed a towel. She dabbed at the spill, her expression tight. She glanced at Jamie's shoes, at the carpet, then at Jamie himself. "That's the third spill tonight," she said, her voice low but sharp. Jamie's eyes filled with tears. He stood up suddenly, the sudden movement causing his seatbelt to tug. His paper airplane slipped from his pocket and fell to the floor. He forgot to pick it up. He opened his mouth to apologize. But Maria cut him off. "Sit down," she said, pointing a finger. "Not just irritation now, not just irritation." Jamie's mother stood up to intervene, but Maria raised her hand. "I've warned him enough," she said softly, but her eyes were hard. "Mr. Langley?" Rose from his seat. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Is there a problem here?" Maria turned to him, her shoulders tense. "Sir," she began, "your son has been careless. He spilled 3 times and he's been tapping me when I'm working." Mr. Langley's face remained composed. "He's 8, he said quietly, allowed to be a child." Maria's jaw tightened. She looked at the spilled juice, the damp carpet, the paper airplane on the floor. She looked back at Jamie, whose lower lip trembled. In a split second of frustration, she swept her arm out and slapped the boy's hand away. The sound echoed softly in the silent cabin. Jamie yelped and staggered back. His face turned pale, tears spilling down his cheeks. A gasp rose from the first-class cabin. Passengers turned. Some eyes widened in shock. Others looked away. Mr. Langley lunged forward to comfort his son. "Jamie," he said, wrapping him in a hug. "It's okay."
"Daddy's here."
The boy buried his face in his father's chest, crying quietly. Mrs. Langley knelt and checked Jamie's hand, her voice soft as she soothed him. Maria stood frozen for a moment, her hand hovering in the air where she had struck. She looked around, saw the stunned faces, and felt a wave of shame. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, asking for an update. Maria swallowed hard and straightened her uniform, her carefully held composure shattered. She took a shaky breath and moved toward the galley to regain her calm. Mr. Langley rose and said to Maria's back, "We will speak with the captain after we land." His tone was quiet but full of warning. Maria nodded stiffly. She would have to explain herself. She felt her heart pounding, her cheeks hot. She closed her eyes briefly, willing her breathing too slow. Jamie's tears subsided as his father stroked his hair. The boy glanced around, noting the worried faces of fellow passengers. Most had turned back to their meals or screens, uneasy. A flight attendant from the second cabin walked by with extra napkins, offering them silently. Jamie accepted. One and blew his nose, his shoulders shaking. In the galley, Maria pressed her back against the wall. She clasped her hands together, her uniform slightly rumpled. She felt tears of her own prick her eyes. She thought of her daughter waiting at home, her bedtime story left unfinished. She thought of the exhaustion from hours of work and the pressure of perfection in first class. She shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. Slowly, she straightened and smoothed her skirt. She squared her shoulders and put on a neutral expression. She would face the captain, face the family, and face the consequences. She would try to explain the moment of frustration that had cost her control. She brushed a stray hair from her face and walked back to the cabin, each step heavy with regret. As she approached, Mr. Langley looked up. Maria's chest tightened. She forced a small nod. The flight attendant who had offered napkins gave Jamie a reassuring smile from across the aisle. The cabin felt tense, the air thick with the memory of the slap. The boy's cake remained half-eaten, the paper airplane still on the floor. Everything had changed in an instant. The promise of a calm sky journey had been broken, and now both boy and attendant hovered on the brink of a new, uncertain chapter. The cabin was quiet as soon as the sound of the slap faded. Even the hum of the engine seemed softer. Passengers stared at Jamie, whose small face glowed red from crying. He hid his cheek against his father's chest. Mr. Langley held him close, one large hand gently rubbing his son's back. Mrs. Langley knelt beside them, brushing Jamie's hair and whispering comfort. The boy's tears soaked her sleeve as he hiccuped softly. Maria stood a few steps away, frozen, her breath caught in her throat. She looked at the boy, then at the rows of seats and the shocked faces around her. Some passengers peered over their tray tables. Others stared through the windows, as if the sky outside might swallow their embarrassment. A gentlewoman in the row behind the Langleys held her hand to her mouth. A tall man near the front tapped his foot, his brow furrowed.
"Oh."
No one spoke. The lead flight attendant, Carlos, hurried forward from the galley. His face was grave, placed a steady hand on Maria's shoulder to guide her away from the center of attention. "Maria," he said softly, his voice low so only she could hear, "we need to speak with the captain." Maria nodded, her uniform crisp, but her posture slumped. She allowed Carlos to steer her toward the closed curtain that separated first class from the galley. Once inside, Carlos closed the sliding door behind them. Maria's eyes brimmed with tears. She balled her hands into fists, as if to squeeze out the mistakes she had made. Carlos glanced at her badge. He took a breath. "What happened?" he asked quietly, keeping his voice calm. Maria swallowed hard. Her throat felt dry. She looked down at her polished shoes. "He kept tapping me," she said in a rush, and spilling juice and I lost my cool. Her voice cracked. I hit him, Carlos. I slapped him in front of everyone. She closed her eyes as tears rolled down her cheeks. I'm so sorry. Carlos placed a hand on her arm. We will get through this, he said firmly. Now we must talk to the captain and write our reports. The ground staff will sort it out when we arrive. Maria nodded blindly. She wiped her cheeks with a tissue from her pocket. She tried to straighten her uniform and tame a stray lock of hair. The two flight attendants stepped out quietly. Carlos led the way up to the cockpit door. Inside the cockpit, the captain and first officer listened as Carlos explained in careful terms. In first class, the attendant lost her patience with a young passenger. There was a physical contact incident. The father and mother are upset. I recommend we inform ground control and prepare for any formal statements. The captain's face was composed, but his eyes showed concern. He pressed a button on the intercom and spoke in a neutral tone. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. We have had an incident in first class. Please remain calm and remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We will provide an update after landing. Thank you. Back in the cabin, the intercom crackled and a hush fell over everyone. Passengers exchanged uneasy glances. A child in the back row whimpered. A couple in business class clutched each other's hands. The cabin crew moved through the aisles, offering water and reassuring smiles. Maria returned to her station near the front, her hands trembling as she unclipped a clipboard. She pretended to fill in passenger feedback forms, but her mind raced. Jamie's sobs had quieted. He sniffled into his father's shirt. His mother dabbed his cheeks with a tissue. You're safe now, she whispered gently. Daddy is right. Here, Jamie looked up at her and nodded slowly. He glanced at Maria, who was standing with her back to them. The boy's eyes held confusion more than fear. He could not understand why a grown woman would strike him for mistakes. He could not fully control. Mr. Langley rose and stood before Maria. He folded his arms, his face calm. Maria looked up, meeting his eyes. She offered a small, shaking nod. He cleared his throat. Ma'am, he said evenly, my son is a curious child. He did not mean harm. His voice was polite but firm. I would like an apology for what happened. Maria's heart pounded. She wanted to collapse, to run, from the cabin, to hide. But her uniform held her in place. Sir, she began, her voice soft. She swallowed and paused. She blinked. I am deeply sorry. I lost my patience. It should not have happened. She clasped her hands. I apologize to you and your son. I accept that, he said. But I also need to hear from the airline after we land. A child should never be struck on a flight. There must be consequences. He glanced at Jamie, whose face was calmer, but still red from tears. I will. Contact your airline's ground office when we land. Maria's shoulders sagged. She had apologized, but she knew it was not enough. The cabin crew moved to clear dinner trays quietly, offering to refresh glasses of water. Maria took a sip, grateful for the cool relief. She noticed that some passengers had turned back to their screens or books, trying to ignore the incident. Others watched her with sympathetic eyes. After a few minutes, the captain returned to the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now on our final descent. Please ensure your seatbelts are fastened and all tray tables are stowed. We apologize for the earlier disturbance and appreciate your understanding. The cabin lights brightened slightly. As the flight attendants clicked overhead switches, Maria moved down the aisle, checking on passengers and offering assistance. She paused by Mr. Langley, who was folding the paper airplane back into his son's hand. He looked up and offered a polite nod. Maria tried to smile gently. Sir, is there anything else I can do? She asked quietly. Mr. Langley shook his head. No, thank you, he said. We will see you on the ground. Adjust the overhead vent, adjusting it above his seat. Jamie glanced at Maria and gave a small wave. Maria hesitated, then gave a slight nod in return. The boy's simple gesture felt like a small step toward forgiveness. As the plane descended through wisps of clouds, the family gathered their things. Mrs. Langley folded the blanket and placed it in her backpack. Mr. Langley put his tablet away. Jamie hooked his seatbelt and picked up his backpack. He slid in the paper airplane, careful this time, as if not to lose it again. A flight attendant collected deserted blankets and magazines, moving softly behind them. Maria returned to the galley and helped Carlos with landing preparations. She supervised the storage of carts, locked compartments, and secured any loose items. She listened to the metallic click and thud of equipment. Inside her mind, the memory of her own daughter. Waiting for bedtime at home made her chest ache. She felt the weight of her mistake and knew it would follow her after the flight. Soon, the plane touched down with a gentle bump. The cabin lights flickered as wheels met ground. Passengers cheered softly, a polite round of applause that rose and fell like a wave. Maria smiled weakly as she felt the plane slow and taxi toward the gate. She heard the seatbelt signs click off and welcomed the relief in the cabin. As the aircraft came to a full stop, the captain's voice thanked everyone for flying. Maria prepared to open the curtains and greet passengers as they disembarked. She glanced at the Langleys one last time. They were standing in the aisle, waiting for their turn. The boy looked up and said quietly, "Thank you for the soup." His voice was small, but sincere. Maria's throat tightened. She knelt to meet Jamie's gaze. "You're welcome," she said softly. She reached out and gave his hand a gentle squeeze. He blinked at her and offered a faint smile. Maria stood and straightened her uniform, her heart heavy. She would face the ground staff soon, but in that moment, a small moment of kindness passed between them. The doors opened in first class. Passengers began to leave. Maria guided each passenger with calm professionalism. She watched as Mr. Langley held Jamie's hand and led him down the jet bridge. His mother followed, carrying the backpack and the paper airplane. The boy turned once and waved a small hand at her. Maria waved back, her smile genuine despite her regret. As the last passenger stepped off, Maria closed the door and exhaled. She leaned against the bulkhead and closed her eyes. The flight was over for her, but the journey of making amends had just begun. In the quiet after the storm, she vowed to learn from her mistake, to rebuild trust, and to show each passenger the care they deserved. An energetic little boy with a paper airplane. The jet bridge hummed with footsteps as passengers disembarked. Maria watched the Langleys step away. She held her breath, hoping she had done enough to calm the boy. But she knew the bigger storm was yet to come. As she finished securing the cabin, her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a message from the airline's operations office. "Report to customer relations immediately." Her heart sank. She gathered her composure, smoothed her uniform, and stepped off the plane. In the terminal, a crisp-suited man waited by the first-class lounge door. He introduced himself as Mr. Patel, head of customer relations. His face was polite but serious. Maria followed him through bright hallways to a small meeting room. Inside, 2 more airline staffers sat behind a polished table, laptops open, and "Folders ready, Mr. Patel," gestured for Maria to sit. Cleared his throat. "Flight attendant Maria Lopez," he began in a steady tone. "We received a report of an incident involving you and a minor passenger in first class. The family has contacted senior management directly." Paused. "We need your account of what happened." Maria's hands trembled slightly on her lap. She took a deep breath. "Sir, I lost my patience after repeated spills and being tapped on my shoulder while I was working. In a moment of frustration, I slapped the boy's hand. I regret it deeply and apologized to the family before landing." Her voice was quiet but earnest. "I accept full responsibility." Mr. Patel nodded. He typed a note. "The boy's father is a principal shareholder and has made several calls to our CEO's office. They demand a formal apology and assurance of action. We must investigate and provide an official response before they escalate further." His gaze met hers. "We are placing you on temporary leave while we complete our review." Maria swallowed. "I understand." Her voice cracked. She felt a lump in her throat. She had devoted years to her job, and now a single mistake could end her career. She shut her eyes briefly. recalling her daughter's bedtime stories waiting at home. One of the staffers, Ms. Crane, spoke next. "We will need a written statement from you, plus any witness reports. Expect to be off duty for at least 3 days." Maria nodded, feeling each word like a weight. She opened her bag and produced a notebook. As she began to write, her pen shook. She described the events in clear, simple terms, refusing to sugarcoat her error. Once finished, Mr. Patel collected the statement. "Thank you, Maria," he said. "Kindly, we know this is difficult. We'll do our best to handle this fairly. You will be notified of the outcome." Maria stood and gave a small nod. She walked out of the room, her head down. In the terminal corridor, she leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. A tear slipped down her cheek. She thought of her daughter's face, waiting for her goodnight kiss. She thought of the small paper airplane she had seen Jamie fold over, and over it reminded her of childhood wonder she now felt she had dampened. Across town, the Langleys waited in a private lounge. Mr. Langley sat in a leather chair, phone pressed to his ear. He spoke in calm but firm tones. "Yes, I expect a formal apology from the airline CEO himself. My son was hurt." He glanced at Jamie, who sat beside him playing quietly on a tablet. The boy still looked uneasy. Mrs. Langley knelt next. To him, stroking his hair, "Daddy is making sure this never happens again," she whispered. Jamie nodded slowly. Mr. Langley hung up and turned to his wife. "They promised to respond by tomorrow morning," he said. "We will see what they do." His tone was steady, but he wore a frown. He loved his son dearly and would not let the incident pass without accountability. Back at Maria's modest apartment, she unlocked the door with a tired hand. Her daughter, Sophia, ran down the hallway with wide eyes. "Mama, you're home late," she exclaimed. Sophia hugged her tightly. Maria closed her eyes and returned the hug. "I'm sorry, baby," she whispered. "Work was hard tonight." Sophia pulled back and looked at her mother's uniform. "Did something bad happen?" she asked, concerned. Maria knelt to hug her. "Again, I made a mistake at work," she said gently. "I lost my patience with a little boy. Now the company's talking to me about it." She wiped her eyes. "But I'm home now, and I love you very much." "Oh." Sophia nodded and offered her mother a homemade drawing. It was a picture of the two of them flying a paper airplane together. Maria smiled through tears. "Thank you, sweetie," she said. She placed the drawing on the fridge and kissed Sophia's forehead. "How about we have some hot chocolate and read your favorite book?" Sophia clapped her hands. "Yes, please," she said. Maria prepared the milk and chocolate powder, stirring carefully. She poured the warm drink into 2 mugs and sat beside her daughter on the couch. As they read stories, Maria tried to set aside the guilt rising in her chest. For Sophia's sake, she needed to breathe and find calm. The next morning, Maria arrived at the airline's headquarters dressed in civilian clothes, her employee badge clipped to her bag. She was escorted to a larger conference room. Several senior staffers and a human resources manager waited. She offered quiet greetings. The CEO, Mr. Davenport, entered and sat at the head of the table. He was a tall man with steel-gray hair and kind eyes. He nodded as Maria took her seat. "Ms. Lopez," he began, "I'm sorry this happened. It is unacceptable that a young passenger was struck. Our company prides itself on respect and care. You have served us well for years, and I want to hear from you directly." His tone was sincere. Maria's heart pounded. She met his gaze, steeling herself. "Sir, I am truly sorry. I let stress get the better of me. I take full responsibility." She spoke slowly and clearly. "I apologize to the boy, to his family, and to the airline. I regret my actions." Mr. Davenport nodded. "Thank you. We also apologize for the mistake. We will apologize formally to the family." He motioned to Ms. Crane. "Please prepare a letter of apology from the CEO to the Langleys. We'll include a goodwill offer. Free flights and an invitation too. Visit our training center. We need to repair trust." Maria felt a light in her chest. She had feared she might be fired. Instead, the CEO spoke of training and redemption. He addressed the staff around him. We will review our training programs to help our attendants cope with stress and handle difficult situations. We can all learn from this incident. After the meeting, Maria walked out into the lobby. She felt a mix of relief and resolve. She knew she had a long road ahead to rebuild her confidence. But she also felt grateful for the chance to learn and grow. She pictured Sophia cheering as she boarded the next flight. She pictured Jamie's tiny wave before leaving the plane. She vowed to remember these moments and to show kindness, even in stress. That afternoon, Maria returned to the training center. It was a bright room with seats arranged in a circle. The counselor greeted her. "Welcome, Maria," she said warmly. "We're here to help you channel your passion for service while managing pressure." Maria nodded and took a seat. Around the circle sat flight attendants from different routes, all there to share stories and practice coping strategies. They spoke of long hours, rude passengers, and the thin line between courtesy and firm enforcement. Maria listened and realized she was not alone. She offered her own story. "I let frustration over a child's taps and spills lead me to make a terrible choice. I want to better understand myself so it never happens again." The counselor guided them through breathing exercises and role-play scenarios. In one exercise, Maria practiced speaking calmly to a mock passenger spilling a drink. Each time, she used the techniques they taught, pausing before reacting, using a kind tone, and setting clear boundaries. She felt the tension and her shoulders ease. After the session, Maria stepped out into the cool evening air. She looked up at the sky, imagining the plane she had served that night flying among the clouds. She placed a hand on her heart, feeling both scars and strength. She tucked her training badge into her pocket and walked to her car. Later that week, Maria returned to duty on a short domestic flight. She wore her uniform proudly and greeted each passenger with renewed calm. When she reached the first class cabin, she noticed a young boy reading quietly. His mother smiled at Maria, and Maria offered the boy a gentle nod. He tapped her shoulder, pointing to his toy airplane. Maria smiled back and knelt beside him. "That's a beautiful airplane," she said softly. "Would you like to show me how it flies?" The boy's face lit up. He launched the plane, and Maria caught it gracefully. She handed it back with a compliment. The boy beamed. For a moment, Maria felt the old magic of service, connecting with people in a small, kind gesture. She thought of Jamie and Sophia, and recognized that even in a sky of mistakes, a single act of care could lift spirits high. ChatGPT said, "The morning sun filtered through the terminal windows as Maria arrived at the gate where Flight 527 would board for its next journey." She felt a flutter in her stomach, but this time it was not dread. It was hope. The memories of the slap and the tense air in first class still lingered in her mind, but they felt less heavy now. She straightened her uniform, smoothed her scarf, and took a deep breath. Today she would see the Langleys again, this time to deliver the airline's formal apology and offer a gesture of goodwill. Inside the lounge, reserved for first-class passengers, Mr. and Mrs. Langley sat side by side. Jamie sat between them. Holding the paper airplane he had made the first night, he was quieter now, but his eyes brightened when he saw Maria enter. Mrs. Langley offered a polite nod, and Mr. Langley rose. Maria approached them slowly, hands clasped in front of her, her breath steady. She felt the family's gaze on her. She gave a small, respectful bow. "Mr. and Mrs. Langley? Jamie," she began, her voice gentle. "Thank you for meeting with me again. On behalf of the airline and its leadership, I offer you my deepest apologies. What happened to Jamie should never have happened. I am truly sorry for causing him pain and embarrassment." Her words felt small compared to the weight of the moment, but she spoke them clearly. Mr. Langley nodded. He had listened to many company statements over the phone this past week. "Thank you, Ms. Lopez," he replied in his calm tone. "We appreciate your apology and the airline's willingness to make amends." He looked at Jamie. "Jamie, would you like to say something?" The boy shifted in his seat, then summoned his courage. "I'm okay now," he said quietly. "Thank you for saying sorry." Small voice held much meaning. Maria felt a rush of relief. She knelt to meet Jamie's eye level. "I know, sorry, can't erase what happened, but I hope you can forgive me," she said softly. Jamie reached out and offered her his paper airplane. Maria accepted it with a grateful smile. "I will treasure this," she said. Then she handed him a small model airplane the airline provided as a gift, a token of apology. "This is for you, Jamie. I hope you like it." Jamie's face broke into a shy smile. Mrs. Langley placed a hand. Mrs. Langley placed a hand on Maria's arm. "Thank you," she said. "This means a lot to him." Maria stood and addressed Mr. and Mrs. Langley. "The CEO has asked me to give you this letter of formal apology from Hammond, a voucher for free travel for your entire family, valid for life. We want to show that we value your trust and will work hard to earn it back." Mr. Langley took the letter. He read a few lines and then offered it back with a nod. "We accept this," he said. "Our family loves to travel, and we will consider flying with you again." His words were measured, but Maria sensed genuine warmth beneath them. She thanked them and bowed slightly before taking her leave. As she walked away, she felt tears behind her eyes, tears of relief, of gratitude, and of the chance to make things right. Back in the cabin, passengers began to board. Maria greeted each one with a smile that felt more genuine and free than before. The memory of her mistake remained, but now it existed alongside the memory of forgiveness. She moved through first class, offering water and menus, helping passengers store their bags. She noticed a mother and her daughter struggling with a suitcase. Maria knelt and helped them lift it into the overhead bin. The young girl looked at Maria with admiration and said, "Thank you." Maria beamed. After boarding was complete, the captain's voice came over the intercom, and the plane prepared for takeoff. Maria took her place at the front of the cabin next to Carlos. They shared a knowing look. The two of them had been through this storm together. Carlos nodded at Maria, offering a silent word of encouragement. She nodded back. As the plane moved into position on the runway, Maria felt calm. She checked that each passenger's seatbelt was fastened. Her heart beat steadily as she thought of Jamie and the Langleys. She hoped their next flight together, whenever it would be filled only with laughter and wonder, not fear or anger. The engines roared, and the plane lifted smoothly into clear skies. Maria walked down the aisle, looking out at the world below. She thought of her daughter, Sophia, and the drawing on her fridge of them flying a paper airplane together. She thought of the boy in first class, building his own airplane. She realized how much small moments matter, small words, small actions, and small gestures of kindness. Midway through the flight, dinner service began. Maria moved through the cabin with renewed confidence. She offered soup, salads, and dessert with a gentle smile. A little boy near the back knocked over his drink. Maria rushed over and said with warmth, "It's okay, sweetie. Let me help you clean that up." The boy blinked and grinned. "Thank you, miss," he said. Maria patted his shoulder kindly and replaced his drink with a new one, free of charge. Later, during a quiet stretch of the flight, when the seatbelt sign was off, Maria found a few free minutes, went to the galley and sat on a low stool. Carlos joined her, offering a cup of tea. They shared a moment of honest conversation. Carlos said, "You handled today well. You've grown from this. I'm proud of you." Maria smiled, feeling the weight lifting from her shoulders. She sipped, the tea letting the warmth spread through her. When the plane gently touched down at the destination airport, the passengers applauded. Maria stood tall and thanked each person as they disembarked. She heard snippets of "well done" and "thank you," looked back at the first-class cabin, and saw an empty paper airplane on a tray table. She picked it up and slipped it into her pocket, a reminder of how far she had come. After her shift, Maria stopped by the airline's training center to share her experience with new recruits. She spoke honestly about the incident and what she learned, the importance of patience, the power of apology, and the value of support from colleagues. The trainees listened, nodding and taking notes. Maria felt proud to turn her mistake into a lesson for others. That evening, Maria returned home. Sophia greeted her at the door with a beaming smile and a new drawing, a picture of Maria in her uniform, holding a paper airplane. Maria hugged her daughter tightly and said, "Thank you for believing in me." Sophia whispered, "I always will." Maria tucked her daughter into bed, kissing her goodnight. As she turned off the light, she thought of the Langleys and the lesson both families had shared, that a moment of anger can be followed by moments of forgiveness and growth. Over the next weeks, the airline published a story in its internal newsletter about the incident and the changes it inspired. It announced new stress management workshops, enhanced customer service training, and a renewed commitment to respectful treatment for all passengers, especially children. Maria's name was not mentioned, but her courage and honesty had become part of a larger effort to improve life in the sky. Months later, Maria found herself on another flight alongside the Langleys. Mr. Langley smiled and said, "Welcome back, Ms. Lopez." Jamie, now 9, waved a small paper airplane at her. Maria winked and said, "Ready to fly." The boy launched his airplane, and Maria caught it gracefully. A gentle breeze from the vent stirred the cabin, and the airplane glided above the seats before she handed it back. Jamie's mother thanked Maria with a warm smile. The memory of the slap felt distant now, replaced by a shared moment of trust. As the plane soared above the clouds, Maria stood at the front of the cabin and took a deep breath. She watched the sun glint on white clouds below, the world stretching out in every direction. In that quiet moment, she felt both humility and confidence. She had made a mistake, faced the consequences, learned from it, and had been given a chance to grow. She was no longer the frightened attendant who had lost her cool. She was Maria, attentive, patient, and committed to kindness in the sky and on the ground. And she carried with her the simple truth that when we err, we can still choose care and compassion for the journey ahead.